Hey there, my name is Becca, and I'm so glad that you are here. If this is your first time with us, welcome. We do all things First Chapter Friday, specifically First Chapter Friday read alouds of your favorite middle grade novels. If you've been with me before, welcome back. I'm so glad you've decided to tune in for another read aloud. For today's read aloud, we are going to be reading Aisha Saeed's new novel, 40 Words for Love. I love Aisha Saeed's novels. She has written Amal Unbound, Omar Rising, Written in the Stars, so many phenomenal novels, and I know this one is going to be just as great. All right, we're going to start by reading the inside cover to get a little bit of an idea what this book is going to be about. Moonlight Bay was once a thriving town with magical lavender seas. Its forest along the shore was a place of refuge for a community fleeing icy conditions back home. But over the past year, everything in Moonlight Bay changed. A young boy died, the seas grayed, and the town's prospects crumbled. Now the locals want someone to blame. Yasmine and Raf have been friends since he first arrived nearly 10 years ago. As they grew older, their friendship blossomed and their feelings shifted. Not that they would ever act on those feelings. Each of them harbors a secret. Did they play a part in the town's misfortunes? Their guilt prevents them from ever being together. As tensions in the town mount, Yas and Raf must test the rules they live by and the beliefs they have grown up with, and question what they owe themselves and their community. If Moonlight Bay is no longer a refuge, can they find refuge with each other? I love love, and I already love this little love story, so I'm super excited to dive on into this first chapter. And I'm reading this first chapter with you guys for the first time, so very excited right now. All right, 40 Words for Love. So first we have this section called Before. I'm not sure before what, I guess we'll find out. And it looks like our first chapter is written from Raf's perspective. The first clear moment Raf recalled from that night was the sound of laughter, hers. He'd heard her easy laughter a million times before, but that night it made his pulse quicken. Picking up his pace, his feet pressed into the packed sand beneath him. He needed to speak to her before he lost his nerve. Faint music from the Moonlight Bay Festival carried over from a distance. He thought he'd glimpsed her slipping away from the celebration. She'd probably grown weary of the crowds. Maybe she'd gone looking for him. How would she react when he finally told her how he felt about her? The golden leaf on his wrist pulsed against his skin. Raf frowned. This birthmark, the one physical difference between the Gullub and the locals, only ever warmed in warning when they'd strayed too far from home. The leaf protects you. It does so at all costs. How many times had Toki Uncle said this? But right now he stood mere steps from his forest home. Raf slowed. All thoughts of his leaf vanished. There she was, Yaz, partially obscured by a grove of palmettos, with her back pressed against a tree. She wore a white sundress, the star-shaped necklace resting against her collarbone glinting in the moonlight. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders. Before he could take a step toward her, Raf realized she was not alone. Her boarding school-raised summer neighbor, Moses, heir to the Holler Candy fortune, came into view. Moses drew closer to her, laughed. His arm encircled her waist. She looked up at him. Their foreheads touched. Heat flooded Raf's face. His chest constricted as he stepped back. Why hadn't Yas told him? They'd been best friends ever since his family fell, shivering from the golub tree over a decade ago. They shared everything with each other, didn't they? But this was a mercy, wasn't it? If nothing else, he had his answer. He didn't even have to ask. A sudden jolt of pain burst from his wrist. Electric currents shot through his body. He doubled over. Tears prickled his eyes. The burning grew sharper by the second, white hot, as if the sun itself had burrowed within his skin. He bit his lip until he tasted blood. Panic bubbling, Raph staggered toward the shoreline. Only then did he see the ordinarily sleepy pink and lavender sea had transformed. Enormous dark waves rose in the distance before crashing to shore, the color of charcoal. Howling winds whipped through his hair. The chaos around him mirrored the chaos within. What was happening? Then came the scream, high pitched, wailing. Clenching his jaw, Raph ran until he found himself before the towering specter of Holler Mansion and saw the image that would never leave him for as long as he lived. 5-year-old Sammy Holler lying by the shore. His nanny, Melinda, knelt over his frame, her body racked with sobs. Sammy lay face down in the sand. He didn't move. As though playing a part in a movie, Raph numbly grabbed his phone. Fingers fumbling, he dialed for an ambulance. He wasn't sure when Moses and Yaz had arrived. When the red and white ambulance lights at last flashed in the distance. A team of paramedics lifted Sammy's limp body onto the stretcher. One thought ran a loop in his mind. This can't be real. This couldn't happen here, not in Moonlight Bay. They'd fix Sammy. That's what doctors did. That's how stories like these ended. Sammy couldn't die. Raph couldn't be sure how he made it back to Willow Forest, to Toki Uncle's door, practically falling into his arms. He only knew that Uncle would have the answers. He always did. Uncle wrapped Raph's wrist in a soothing compress. He brought him a warm cup of almond tea, a blanket. It was only when the teacup clattered against its saucer that Raph realized he was trembling. Through ragged breaths, he managed to get the words out. Sammy on the damp beach, the sea churning dark and deadly. Uncle's expression grew grim. He ran a hand through his hair, pure white like the snow-capped mountains of Gulub they'd left behind. What were you doing out there, son? I was looking for Yaz. Raph's shoulders slumped. Raph had to tell him. Of course he did. Uncle needed to know. Raph, Uncle said slowly, were you going to? I didn't say anything, Raph said quickly. I saw her and Moses and... He looked at his leaf, gold and green as ever. It's not like she feels the same. Toki Uncle was quiet, translating Raph's broken words into meaning. Shame coursed through Raph. His father had died 3 years earlier, but Toki was a father figure to all the Gulub who ended up within the forest of Moonlight Bay. What happened when you saw her? He finally asked. That's when it began to burn. Had anything been amiss with the water? Uncle hesitated. Before you saw Moses and Yaz? I don't think so. Raph's mouth grew dry. Do you think my leaf had something to do with this? A moment of tense silence passed. This is my fault, Uncle finally said. I warned you away from Yaz. I had hoped that would be enough. You said I could never be with her because we were returning to Gulub soon, Raph said shakily. But Uncle, it's been 10 years and... I didn't tell you the rest of it, Uncle interrupted. Just as leaving the safety perimeter erases one leaf, choosing to be with someone who is not of us, that too can have devastating consequences. Though until now, I hadn't been certain what sort of consequences. Raph thought of the waves, the darkness, what he had almost told her. My leaf, it couldn't have done all that. Seeing Uncle's ashen face, his voice grew smaller. Could it? Uncle didn't reply. His silence, its own answer. Raph sank his head into his hands. He felt lightheaded. Had his birthmark disappeared, he'd have lost any ability to return to Gulub or to remain with his own family within their forest home. Lost leaves were catching. Before they could speak more, a fist pounded on the front door, followed by a shout. Come quick! The Gulub tree is opening. Someone is here. Raph froze. New arrivals? The tree hadn't been opened in years. Gripping his cane, Uncle rose. He placed a hand on Raph's shoulder and leaned close. We will speak more on this later, but not a word to anyone, Raph. Ever. He said gently but firmly. Do you understand? Raph looked at his wrist. The leaf was calm now, a glittering etching on his skin once more. The leaf protects you. It does so at all costs. Raf Javen hadn't said a word to Yaz, but a price had been exacted all the same. All right, honestly, I think this was one of the most gripping first chapter Fridays I have done maybe ever. I am very engaged with the story, very intrigued, very curious to see what happened. I was kind of surprised that this definitely sounds like it has a little bit of a fantasy tone with this tree opening up and this magical birthmark. So I'm really curious to see more about that. And I'm really rooting for Raf and Yaz personally, but I'm just a softie like that. All right. If you enjoyed this first chapter Friday read aloud, please consider liking and subscribing. It makes me really happy. That being said, I can't wait to see you guys next time for first chapter Friday of our next novel. All right. Until next time, everyone, happy reading.